Welcome, traveller. Come, take a seat by the fire. Let the warmth chase away the night while I tell you a story. One spun from ancient whispers and hidden fears. Here, in the glow of these flames, myths come alive. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed tale of Medusa, a story of beauty, curses, and power twisted by gods. So, leaning close, open your mind and let the shadows dance. By dawn, you may never see your own reflection quite the same way again. Now, let's step back in time to when Greek myths were taken very seriously. Imagine a world where earthquakes happened because Poseidon was angry, and the sun rose because Apollo drove his chariot across the sky. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were explanations for how the world worked. People prayed to these gods, built temples for them, and made offerings to keep them pleased. Storytelling and religion were one and the same. Myths echoed everywhere, at festivals, around campfires, and in everyday conversation. They taught lessons, warned of consequences, and guided behavior. Who might turn you into a tree or a spider for disrespecting them before writing was common. Poets and bards carried these tales from town to town. No one worried about staying on message. Stories evolved with every retelling. A single myth could explain why spiders spin webs, why flowers grow by ponds, or caution people not to claim they were better at weaving than Athena. Medusa's tale did all that too. It gave meaning to eerie rock formations that looked like frozen people. It warned against arrogance, disrespecting the gods, and forbidden attraction. And unlike other monsters, she wasn't born a beast, she became one. That transformation made her story even more disturbing. To the ancient Greeks, myths were about power, who had it, who lost it, and how quickly lives could change when gods interfered. A priestess could fall from grace and become a monster. A nobody like Perseus could become a hero with divine favor, and these themes still resonate today. We no longer blame earthquakes on gods, but we still understand what it feels like to be punished unfairly, to be changed by trauma, to face challenges we didn't create. That's why Medusa's story still holds power. It's not just about snakes or petrifying eyes. It's about control, vulnerability, and what it means to be human. Tonight, that cave isn't just a monster's dwelling. It's a symbol of everything the ancients couldn't explain or contain. And that's why her tale still unsettles us, even after all this time. Long before the snakes and the stone gaze, Medusa was just a woman, not a monster, but a mortal priestess serving in Athena's temple. Picture her there, tending sacred flames, her hair uncovered as a sign of devotion. No one feared her. No one turned to stone. That came later. Stories differ about who she was. Some say Poseidon found her irresistible. Others suggest she boasted about her beauty beside Athena. But the earliest accounts don't mention beauty at all. Just a priestess doing her duties until her life was ripped apart. The one constant? It all happened in Athena's temple, where the goddess should have protected her. Then it gets complicated. Poseidon desired her, whether consensually or not is unclear. Ovid later describes it as an assault, while Homer treated it more like a fling. What's certain is that Athena didn't ask for Medusa's side of the story. When the temple was defiled, someone had to face consequences. And since gods don't punish gods, Medusa was the scapegoat. Archaeological art shows us something emotional. In a 6th century BCE vase, Medusa is human-faced, even sad. Fangs and a lolling tongue appear much later. It's as if each generation needed her to look more terrifying before they could fully villainize her. That shift is alarming. A priestess becomes a cautionary tale, then a full-blown monster. Snake hair isn't the real issue. It's how quickly stories can twist to confirm beliefs. If powerful women are dangerous, then the beautiful ones must petrify. If gods punish the guilty, then the punished deserve it. Athena's curse solved nothing. Poseidon walked free. Medusa lost everything. First her life, then her humanity. The real horror isn't the petrifying gaze. It's how easily a person can be erased from memory and replaced by a symbol. Medusa didn't choose to represent divine wrath or female danger. She was a woman in the wrong place at the wrong time. Remember, by the time Perseus came along, no one remembered the human priestess. only the monster. Maybe that was Athena's real punishment, making sure Medusa would never be seen as human again. So when you picture Medusa surrounded by statues, remember, they froze not from meeting a monster, but because they never saw the woman. Imagine Medusa in Athena's temple. Maybe she's lighting incense or arranging fresh offerings. Then suddenly, her scalp starts to prickle. She reaches up, expecting to feel her hair, but instead her fingers touch something cold and coiled. The strands she's always known now twist around her wrist, hissing. When she pulls her hand back, the snakes follow. Her skin tightens, turning rough like stone. In the polished bronze of the temple's mirror, she sees eyes that glow and teeth too sharp. Athena's curse isn't just punishment, it's total erasure. The priestess is gone before the last scale finishes forming. The Greeks had a word for this: miasma, a spiritual stain that needed to be cleaned. The temple was defiled. Poseidon couldn't be punished. He was a god. So Medusa, mortal and helpless, took the blame. Her transformation did two things. It cleansed the sacred space and sent a clear warning. Cross a god and you won't just die. You'll become the next cautionary tale. Athena did this often. Remember Arachne, a weaver who boasted she was better than the goddess. One moment she's at her loom, the next she sprouts extra legs, doomed to weave forever as a spider. The gods didn't just punish, they turned people into symbols. Arrogance became a spider, beauty became a monster. But Medusa's curse didn't go as planned. Athena wanted her powerless. Instead, she gave her terrifying power. The snake sensed threats before Medusa did. Her gaze could turn attackers to stone mid-strike. Some later writers even argued the curse was a twisted kind of protection. If she couldn't be safe, at least she could be deadly. Her cave was no chosen home. It was the only place left. Villagers who once brought food to Athena's priestess now threw stones at her shadow. The statues inside weren't trophies. They were people who came to finish what the gods started. And the gods weren't done. They armed Perseus with winged sandals, a mirrored shield, even a special sack to carry her head. It was almost as if they built the monster just to have a hero slay her. Still, Medusa's power lasted beyond death. Even severed, her head kept turning men to stone. Athena placed it on her own shield, not as mercy, but to weaponize her again. You don't mount a head like that unless you plan to use it. That's the bitter twist. Athena tried to erase Medusa, but made her unforgettable. The punishment meant to isolate her, turned her into something eternal. Every statue in that cave, every story retold, proved how hard it is to destroy someone once they become a symbol. Medusa was supposed to be a warning. Instead, she became a mirror. Medusa's cave is never warm. Water drips steadily from the ceiling, echoing off the statues that line the walls. But these aren't decorations. They're accidents. Men who came for glory, but ended up frozen forever. Their faces show shock, their hands lifted too late. Medusa moves among them like a silent shadow, her snakes stirring quietly at her passing. She doesn't sleep much. The snakes see in the dark and taste the air for intruders. When she rests, it's in the deepest chamber, curled on stolen cloaks and dried seaweed. There's no fire. It would draw attention. She survives on whatever the sea brings. Crabs in tidal pools, stranded fish. Occasionally a bird strays inside, and the snakes take care of it. Those statues are the only company she has. She remembers each one, the hunter with a broken spear, the king whose crown fell as he turned to stone. Not all were attackers. Some were simply lost. A shepherd chasing a stray goat, a boy chasing a ball. They didn't deserve their fate. Neither did she. The cave doesn't care about fairness. Artists often paint her lair as a terrifying wasteland filled with skulls. But the reality is quieter, sadder. She keeps a corner clean for weaving mats from reeds, another for sorting shells. Even monsters need routines. One modest 5th century BCE vase shows her asleep among plain rocks. No dramatic shadows, no piles of bones. And the loneliness is worse than hunger. At first, she talked to the statues, imagining they could hear her. then to the snakes, but they only hiss. Now she stays silent. Voices carry too far. Sometimes, just to feel sound in her throat, she hums softly. She hears rumors from fishermen near the cave's entrance about Perseus, who brags he'll bring her head home. She almost laughs. They always boast. The ones who succeed come quietly. Her routine is her safeguard. She checks the pools at dawn, the entrance at dusk. The snakes prefer the left tunnel. Patterns can be dangerous when someone studies you, but without structure, you're just waiting to die. So she waits. Not by choice, but because she has nowhere else. The village has new priestesses, the gods have moved on, and even the statues will outlast her. All she has is the next meal, the next cautious check of dark tunnels, the small hope that today might be the day no one comes. And far away, a boy polishes a shield, unaware his destiny smells of damp stone and old seaweed. The cave doesn't care about heroes. It just keeps dripping, patient as the tide, as the snakes scent bronze and ambition. Perseus never chose to hunt a Gorgon, he was forced into it. His mother married a king who feared rivals. So the king gave Perseus an impossible task. Bring me Medusa's head or die. That was classic Greek problem solving. Send someone else to face death. The gods loved these setups. They gave mortals just enough help to make things dramatic, but never enough to promise survival. For Perseus, they offered strange tools. Athena gave him a polished shield so he could see Medusa's reflection without looking at her directly. Hermes gave him winged sandals so he could fly. Hades lent him a helmet that made him invisible, mainly to slip past Medusa's protective sisters. There was even a special bag to hold her head. But none of this was truly for Perseus. The gods were settling their own scores. Athena's shield was revenge against Poseidon for violating her temple. Hermes' sandals kept stories moving. Hades simply liked adding chaos. And nothing came with guarantees. A dented shield could twist Medusa's image. The sandals could fail mid-flight. The helmet's power might vanish with a sneeze. Divine help always came with hidden risks. Some stories say Athena guided him, whispering advice like a divine guide. Others say she just handed over the shield and left. Either way, the message was clear. Here are tools, the danger is yours alone. The shield was most important. It was more than a mirror to avoid her eyes. It could also stop a spear. The sandals sounded wonderful, but no one taught him how to fly. He likely crashed often before learning. The helmet was simpler. Slip it on, vanish, hope you didn't trip. Perseus wasn't brave because he was fearless. He was brave because he was chosen to be expendable. The gods needed someone to fix their mess. Each gift reminded him he might not survive, and that he wouldn't succeed without skill. So he trained. He flew until he stopped falling. He learned to watch shapes in reflections, to move without sound. The magic made him dangerous, but practice kept him alive. That's how heroes are made, through effort, mistakes, and near misses. By the time he left for Medusa's cave, his gear was worn, the shield was scratched, the sandals frayed, the helmet smelled of sweat. But they still worked, mostly, and mostly had to be enough. The cave waited, hidden by rock and tide. Inside, a woman turned into a warning, listened for footsteps. She had heard heroes before. They always sounded the same, confident, careless, soon defeated. Perseus tightened his grip. In the shield's reflection, he saw his tense face. He realized then, the gods hadn't sent him to kill a monster. They sent him to erase their mistake. Whether he lived didn't matter. They only needed his name, not his heartbeat. The wind rose. The sandals twitched. Somewhere ahead, water dripped like a ticking clock. Two doomed fates were about to meet. Perseus drew a breath. The gods had given him everything he needed to face Medusa, everything except a way home. Perseus landed where the cliffs met the sea. His sandals barely touched down on sharp rocks, slick with salt. Before him gaped the cave's dark mouth, half hidden by tide pools. It smelled of wet stone and something metallic, likely the old weapon still gripped by statues near the entrance. Those weren't decorations, they were warnings. Each figure said the same thing. I thought I could kill her too. He He used the polished shield like a guide, its reflection showing a twisted, warped view of the path ahead. Loose stones shifted under his feet, louder than he wanted. As he crept deeper, the statues grew more frequent. Some had raised shields. Others had turned to run, caught forever mid-step. One man's face was frozen in pure terror. Further in, drips of water echoed. Then came a soft scraping, a sound like scales against rock. Medusa was moving. Maybe she always sensed intruders. The cave's narrow walls made the reflections harder to read. One missed shape, and he would join the others, locked forever in stone. Art often shows this moment wrong, depicting Perseus strolling in casually, sword at his side. The truth would have been tense and awkward. He had to walk sideways, eyes fixed on the shield, hoping his feet wouldn't catch on jagged stone. Watching your enemy only through a reflection was like trying to thread a needle in a broken mirror. The cave grew colder. His breath clouded the shield. Just as he wiped it clear, something shifted. Not in front of him, but overhead. The ceiling. Medusa clung there like a silent predator, waiting. Clever. Most men never thought to look up until their legs were already turning to stone. His arm burned from holding the shield so long. If he stumbled, even for a heartbeat, it would be over. Then everything went still. Even the constant dripping paused. A shadow crossed the dim light behind him. In the reflection, a shape unfurled. Snakes, scales, human eyes. Perseus did not blink. Blinking was too dangerous. He counted 3 slow heartbeats as the image in the shield sharpened. Medusa faced him directly, her gaze hidden by the shield's glare. She did not attack. She waited. That was worse. It meant she had done this many times before. Outside, waves crashed against the rocks like a distant drum. Inside the cave, only 2 figures moved. Both hunters, both hunted. One would walk out alive. The other would become another statue in this silent hall. Perseus adjusted his grip on the sword, steadied the shield. The final moment had come. Time stretched. Perseus first saw Medusa in the curve of his shield, warped by polished bronze, snakes shifting across her face. She stood still, which was worse. It meant she knew how this usually ended. 3 options. Look up and turn to stone instantly, look away and risk a slower death, or keep eyes locked on her reflection and hope to strike first. The shield bent everything. Every frozen figure in that cave proved what direct contact meant. Old tales make it simple. Swing, head rolls, done. Reality was harder. He had to keep her centered in the reflection, guide the blade clean through. Too slow, she'd turn. Too shallow, he'd only anger her, like threading a needle by staring into a spoon. Myths disagree. Some say she slept when he struck. More execution than battle. Others show her awake, reaching even as the blade cut. Ancient art leaves her final expression a mystery. Later artists guessed, screams, eerie smiles, or quiet acceptance. When the blade finally bit, the head fell clean. No spray of blood, just a heavy thud into the special bag. The snakes writhed for a moment, then stilled. Perseus didn't dare check. Her body staggered, knees hit stone, then collapsed. Some say the snakes hissed until sunset. Others, that they turned to stone too. He didn't stay to learn which. The cave smelled of iron now. He moved past the statues, faces frozen in shock, terror. For a heartbeat, he wondered what Medusa's last look had been. But he would never know. The myths skipped the small truths. If he cleaned the blade, if the bag leaked, how it felt to carry a living head still buzzing with power. Fear lingers after danger ends. His hands shook. On the cliffs, he tightened the drawstring twice. Inside, the head shifted, still deadly. Victory didn't feel like triumph, just wind, waves, and the cold fact that he was still flesh. He'd bring the head to the king. The stories would call him hero. But Medusa's power wasn't gone. If anything, a death made it portable. Far below, tide pools mirrored the cave's mouth. No movement, just the shape of a lifeless body on cold rock, waiting for later generations to misunderstand. The myths would say Perseus won. That was only half true. Perseus quickly learned dead didn't mean harmless. The head in his bag still moved. Snakes twisted under the leather, searching for something to strike. It felt heavy, like a sack of wet stones. Each time he shifted it, he imagined cold lips brushing inside the bag, whispering curses he couldn't hear, but somehow felt. He didn't wait long to use it. When he found Andromeda chained to a rock, a sea monster approaching, he didn't bother with his sword. He hovered above the water, opened the bag, and let the creature look. It turned to stone from the eyes out, another rock on the shore. Soon people might pray there, forgetting it once lived. Back home, King Polydectes set a trap disguised as a feast. When guards closed in, Perseus didn't draw steel. He lifted the bag. "You wanted proof," he said. The king's grin froze. His cup stuck to his hand. The hall filled with statues caught mid-breath. Afterward, no one spoke Medusa's name. They swept the dust away and acted as if nothing happened. Carrying the head changed Perseus. At night, he slept with one hand on the bag, half dreaming of snakes sliding through his fingers. Sometimes he stared into mirrors, waiting for his eyes to cloud over. Power left marks. Merchants avoided him. Dogs whimpered at his shadow. Even his sandals seemed slower, weighed down by the head. Athena took it at last. She fixed it to a shield, turning Medusa into an eternal weapon. The snake still writhed when she nailed it down. Maybe that was the point. Gods love turning their problems into trophies. Now, whenever Athena lifted her shield, armies saw Medusa's face, mouth open, eyes that still seemed to watch. It wasn't justice. It was branding. Soon others copied it. Soldiers painted her on shields. Builders carved her above doors. People wore her image on charms. They forgot she was once human. The Gorgon became a logo, scary enough to ward off evil, yet familiar enough to keep around. Villages that would have burned a woman for snake hair now hung her face above their beds for luck. The real head stayed on Athena's shield for ages, fading from flesh to bronze. The snakes became patterns. Her fierce look softened to simple lines. By Roman times, artists added tiny wings, as if she'd always been just decoration. The truth got buried, like moss covering statues, yet her power lingers. Even now, see her on a building or coin, and something inside freezes. That's the real curse. She no longer needs to turn bodies to stone. Her story still stops us, if only for a breath, making us wonder who truly won. Athena took Medusa's head and did what gods often do. She turned it into a trophy. Her great shield, the Aegis, wasn't just protection. It was a message. Bronze stretched tight across its frame, polished to blind armies in sunlight, now bore Medusa's face at its center. Some called it an honor, others saw it for what it was, the final insult. Waving that shield in battle sent a clear warning. Enemies didn't just see Athena, they saw the monster she conquered. The lesson was brutal. Cross me and your fate will be the same. It didn't matter that Athena helped create this tragedy. The gods always rewrote their stories to look wise and victorious. The snake still moved on that shield, just a little, enough to remind anyone watching that the power was real. People still argue over Athena's reasons. Some say she reclaimed Medusa's power, turning a victim's curse into armor for all women. Others think it was pure control, transforming her biggest scandal into a symbol of might. Likely it was both. Athena wasn't known for soft feelings. She saw tools, not tragedies. If a dead Gorgon could terrify armies, why waste it? Artists adored the shield. They painted it on pottery, carved it into temples, even laid it into floors as mosaic. Over time, Medusa's look softened. The snarling fangs became delicate. her snakes twisted into graceful loops. By the Roman era, she looked more like an angry beauty than a monster. Classical art cleaned up terror, turning horror into something stylish. But the shield did more than decorate. Ancient texts say it shone like lightning, breaking armies by fear alone. Medusa's curse, once her prison, now worked perfectly for Athena. Each enemy who turned and ran proved divine power. The greatest trick was taking someone's worst suffering and making it a brand. Long after people stopped praying to Athena, they still carved Medusa's face into walls and coins. The aegis became a template copied everywhere. You've probably seen her without realizing it. On a university seal, a manhole cover, even a luxury brand's logo. Medusa's death didn't set her free. It turned her into a global image. Some scholars now call Athena the first to repackage pain as power. Was it clever? Cruel? Maybe both. The shield doesn't answer. It still hangs in museum replicas. Medusa's mouth forever open in a silent scream. The bloodstains were polished away long ago. What remains is a neat, safe monster who can't speak back. Athena won twice. She gained a weapon and a story that made her look wise. Medusa gained immortality, but only as a side character in her own tragedy. The snakes still hiss if you listen closely, not with rage, but as a warning. This is what happens when the powerful write history. Your pain becomes... Medusa's story used to be simple. A monster is slain, and that's the end. But over time, people began to question it. What if the real monster wasn't her? What if she was just left holding the blame while others wrote the rules? That's when her image started to change, from a warning to something worth reclaiming. Take the Versace logo. Gianni Versace didn't choose Medusa because she was frightening. He chose her because she was unforgettable. Their brand even says she stands for beauty and power that stops you in your tracks. The old warning, "Don't look too long," became a selling point. Now her face sells handbags instead of turning sailors to stone. Strange progress, but still power. Then came modern movements. During #MeToo, protest signs began showing Medusa's head, paired with lines like, "Don't look away." Survivors saw themselves in her story, punished for what someone else did, then turned into a cautionary tale. Therapists even use her as a symbol of trauma. Turning to stone isn't just a curse, it's a perfect picture of how bodies freeze under fear. Artists picked it up too. In London, an installation made her head from silver ribbons almost beautiful. In New York, they projected her face on buildings, the eyes following you as you walked by. The message was clear. Maybe she isn't the one who should be afraid. Maybe her stare was always meant to turn judgment back on those who wronged her. Some see her as an eco-symbol, nature striking back. Anime turns her into a tragic hero. A Swedish feminist group even uses her as a logo against workplace harassment. Each retelling shapes her into what people fear or hope for today. The irony? Medusa is more powerful now than in the old myths. She's no longer just Athena's trophy or Perseus's prize. She stands for resistance. Even her snakes got new meaning. Not just threats, but signs of shedding old skins, starting over. No other Greek monster became this. The Minotaur is still just a beast in a maze. The Hydra is still a plot device. But Medusa became a movement. Maybe it's because her story was always about perception. Who decides what is monstrous and what is misunderstood? Her face still stops people, just in a different way. It's that pause before blaming a victim, that breath caught in the throat when someone says, "Me too." The power flipped. Those stone statues might have been her accusers if she'd ever had a chance to speak. Now, in a way, she finally does. So when you see her on a purse or a protest sign, remember, this is what happens when people stop repeating the old myth and start listening to the woman inside it. Her snakes don't just hiss anymore, they sing, and that song is far more interesting than any story the gods once told. Myths survive because they change shape. Medusa's story warned ancient Greeks about pride. Now it helps modern therapists explain trauma. The details stay the same, but each generation finds new meaning. That's why her face is carved into temples from 2,500 years ago and spray-painted on protest signs today. She's not just a character, she's a mirror. Think about the stories you heard at bedtime. The ones that last aren't always clear-cut morals. They're the ones that leave gaps, room for each listener to fill. Every child who learns about Medusa imagines something different. Snakes, statues, or the moment she realized her gaze could kill. Homer left blanks that Ovid later filled. Artists, poets, even brands kept adding layers. Good stories never end. They wait for the next person to ask, what if? What's strange is how easily we still recognize her. Show someone an ancient vase with Medusa's face, then a modern meme. They'll know it's the same figure. You can't say that about many old myths. The Minotaur is just a bullman. Scylla is some random sea creature. But Medusa stands out. Maybe it's because her curse was tied to sight, and we're drawn to eyes. Maybe it's because everyone's felt like a monster at some point. In Greece, she warned, "Don't insult the gods, or you'll end up like that priestess." During the Renaissance, artists used her as a sign of beauty turned deadly. Today, she's reclaimed as a survivor. The story didn't change, we did. Myths aren't history. They're conversations we keep having with ourselves. Every new retelling adds a layer. Think about it. Parents in Athens thousands of years ago told their kids Medusa's story to teach them humility. Now you're hearing it, maybe to unwind before bed. Same story, different fears. Humans haven't changed as much as we think. We still dread curses, whether from gods or failed relationships. We still root for the underdog, even when the underdog has fangs. The best stories aren't really about the past. They're about what we need right now. That's why Medusa still lives. Need a villain? She fits. Need a symbol of resistance? She's there. Want to sell luxury? Her face still grabs attention. Just no longer turns it to stone. She's not alone. Every old myth waits for its moment. The Trojan War? Still about pride and pointless battles. Pandora's box? Still about unleashing chaos. These tales bend with time, ready to snap into new meanings when the world needs them. So why do we keep telling Medusa's story? Because it was never only about her. It's about us, what frightens us, what excites us, what makes us stare twice into our reflections. The best myths are like her cave. They freeze one moment forever, but leave us wondering about all. Medusa's story changes depending on who tells it. Sometimes she's a monster, sometimes she's a victim, sometimes she's a warning. The only constant is that she was made, not born. The gods turned her into something to fear, and then into something to use. Her tragedy was twisted into a lesson. Her pain became a decoration. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, think about that. Maybe the real villains weren't the monsters we've been told to fear. Maybe they were the gods who cursed her, or the hero who took her head, or the people who kept retelling her story only to suit themselves. Or maybe there are no clear villains at all, just flawed beings trying to make sense of the things that go wrong. Either way, her snakes still hiss through time. They remind us to pause before we decide who deserves to be called a monster. They remind us how quickly power can rewrite someone's life, or erase their humanity altogether. So sleep well. Tomorrow is another chance to decide what kinds of stories we want to keep telling, and who we choose to see as monstrous. Because somewhere, in every myth that survives, there's a piece of us, our hopes, our fears, our need to understand what we can't control. That's why these stories last. And that's why Medusa, in all her forms, still watches us from the edges of old vases, coins, paintings, and dreams. Thank you for watching Sleepless Myth Stories. If this tale stirred something in you, or left you questioning who the real monsters are, you're not alone. Subscribe for more myths that haunt, heal, and never quite let go. Until next time, sleep well if you can.